My name is Julia, and for a long time I lived believing that I was losing my mind. But it wasn't crazy. It was a silent abuse with a face of sanity. At first, the narcissist was attentive, helpful. I admired myself for being sensitive, understanding. He said that I was different, that he noticed me like no one else. I smiled, thinking that I had finally found someone who understood me. But this charm didn't last. Soon the gift he said he admired became a way of showing me that I was too weak, feeling useless, and only he knew how to do everything. The day I finally put a boundary, he looked at me, paused, and said in a low voice, "You're imagining things. I think he's exaggerating again." And that phrase planted a poison in my mind. There was no rude gesture. The accusation was silent but powerful. I was the problem. From then on, I began to doubt everything. He called to remember where he had left my bag. I wondered if I was really making mistakes in the details, or if it was just paranoia. He reinforced this in small doses. "You don't remember it well. You're confused today. You've always been kind of dramatic." And I fell into his spiral. I realized that he had become the therapist of my mind, always whispering that I was bewildered, but I wasn't. I was being manipulated, and that was the cruelest point. Gaslighting makes you silence your voice from within, until you think that the emptiness was you who produced it. Once we argued because he left a frustrating message on the table. I said I felt diminished. He turned around and said, "You've been so sensitive lately. Seriously, sometimes I think I'm living with someone else." That destroyed me, because in that other person, there was me. And if the problem was me, then had I won? That was his trap. Gaslighting is a healthy mist. It aggregates, but kills. It makes you believe that your heart beats wrong, your memory fails, you're emotional unbalanced, and you, like me, are trying to fix it, not knowing that the problem was not with you, but with the system he created around you. And this confusion, it was what the narcissist wanted. The doubt has become my daily life. His every silence was a weapon, and every time I questioned it, I was accused of exaggeration, which made me wonder, was it really you who was making a mistake? Over time, I could no longer differentiate between my memory and what he said had happened. That's when gaslighting started to tire me out inside. He had the gift of transforming my certainties into uncertainties. If I remembered an event, an argument, a phrase, it made me feel that I had misinterpreted. "That never happened," he said calmly. "You remember wrong." And so, small things became a block of doubts. I began to review what I said in conversations. Soda that I left on the table became a reason to ask myself, "Do you even remember what you did?" My gestures became a reason for criticism. "You always exaggerate." It was pure gaslighting. It made me doubt my sanity, my perceptions, my own reality. And over time, the confusion became routine. The emotional fog was so thick that it seemed to be justice. I was the one who was exaggerating, too emotional, dramatic. It wasn't. I was being manipulated. This has had real effects on my mental health. I began to experience chronic anxiety, that feeling of numbness in my chest, the lump in my throat, and the constant fear of making a mistake again. I felt like I needed permission to exist. This is typical of gaslighting victims, who become anxious, depressed, anxious. In addition, I began to isolate myself. I avoided talking to friends about the events, because I always ended up thinking that I was the problematic one, that maybe they thought I was exaggerated, because he said that, and I believed. I completely silenced myself. For a while, I had crises where I asked myself, am I deluding myself? Is he right? Those thoughts are common in those who suffer this type of abuse. Self-confidence is shattered, and you start to depend on their version of reality. One day, in the midst of a crisis, I searched the internet for the meaning of gaslighting. It was a shock to realize that what I was experiencing had a name, and that thousands of women reported the same. Phonetically and textually, there was a subtle manipulation, disguised as reproach, which had a clear purpose, to take me off track. It was there that I started writing the events on my cell phone. Date, time, phrase, feeling. The notes were my antidote. The more I wrote, the more clarity came back. I reviewed these records whenever I felt confused, and it reminded me that my memory was valid. And there was a subtle turn. I went into therapy. Speaking my truth out loud, without filter, gave me back my confidence. I began to rewire the circuits of my mind. I started to reconnect with friends, I accepted recommendations for books on emotional abuse. Gradually, I recognized certain patterns: denial of reality, blaming, distortion of memories, the classic trio of gaslighting. All this gave me strength. In my first attitude of self-affirmation, I was direct. When he tried to distort a memory, I stared at him and said, "I'm remembering it clearly. That happened." Yes, it was a test, and I resisted. For the first time, his gaze changed, and I smiled inside. Gaslighting didn't need screaming. It was control with a calm voice, a mask of sanity, strategic silence, and I escaped from that now at my own pace. I could trust myself again. If you're out there, immersed in this mess, know, what you feel is not madness. It's a sign that someone is manipulating you. You haven't lost your memory. It was stolen from you with words. You are not unstable. You're trying to make sense of it all over again. You deserve clarity. You deserve to get away from this fog. And most of all, you deserve to trust yourself again. It was when I stopped arguing with him and started arguing with myself that I realized how sunk I was. Because I didn't try to convince him of anything anymore. I tried to convince myself that I wasn't making it all up, that I wasn't unstable, that the discomfort he felt was legitimate, that that inner voice, even muffled, was still mine. And she said, even weakly, "You are being manipulated." But the narcissist does not give up easily. When he realizes that he is losing control through gaslighting, he changes tactics. He begins to give in small things, to play vulnerable. It was at this stage that he started telling me things like, "I know I'm not easy. Maybe I do have some emotional flaws. It's just that I was hurt a lot in childhood. But you're the only person who makes me want to improve." And look, these phrases are dangerous because they come as if they were a request for empathy, but they are just another way of arresting. He didn't want to change. He wanted to make me doubt again, to make me believe that if I had more patience, he would become that man from the beginning. And I almost fell. Almost. But this time, I had records. He had notes. I had a therapist accompanying me. I had my intuition finally on my side. And more importantly, I already knew that the cycle of emotional abuse is predictable. He doesn't get better. He adapts. I started to react differently. When he said to me, "You are getting everything wrong," I replied, "It may even be. But that's how I feel. And that's what matters to me." He was annoyed by my calmness, because the narcissist cannot bear to lose the centrality of the narrative. He wants to be the owner of his perception. And when you start listening to yourself, he realizes that he is losing power. I started to rescue little pieces of myself. I went back to listening to songs that he said were silly, wearing clothes that he thought were childish, laughing out loud at unfunny jokes, not to apologize for having feelings. And incredible as it may seem, he became more aggressive, less careful in manipulations, as if the mask were slipping. It was then that I realized the most painful and liberating truth at the same time. He never loved me. He loved the control he had over me, and it destroyed me, but it also set me free. It felt like mourning. I cried a lot, not by him, but for me, for the Julia that I was, for the woman who spent months, maybe years, trying to be understood by someone she never intended to understand. I spent nights wondering how I let this happen, but I stopped, because now I understand. I wasn't stupid. I was led, little by little, to the point of not trusting myself, and this can happen to anyone. From there, I started planning my departure. No ad, no fight, no attempt to convince him of anything. I just prepared myself. I organized my things. I told a trusted friend. I left the essentials separate. I waited for the right moment, and when he traveled on a weekend, I went. No letter, no message, no explanation, because it is not explained to those who never wanted to understand. And when the door closed behind me, I breathed like it was the first time in years. It wasn't easy. It is not yet, but it is true. And after so long doubting everything, experiencing something real, even if it's pain, is a relief. If you're there, still wondering if you're going crazy, if what you're experiencing is just a phase, listen to that inner voice. It is yours, and she's still alive. You're not confused. You're trying to survive gaslighting, and I promise you, there is life after doubt, and it starts with a decision to come back to you. When that door closed, I realized I wasn't running away. I was finding myself again. I left in silence, but my heart was ringing. Each step was a mixture of relief and pain, as if I was breaking free from an emotional trap, while also acknowledging the weight of what I left behind. In the first days away, the feeling of peace was accompanied by guilt. I wanted to take care of myself, but I felt like I was betraying the past. I embraced everything I needed to cry about. Nights when I sobbed without knowing why. Mornings when the coffee came crooked because my soul was still trembling. But by accepting this pain, I allowed myself to heal. Each time a memory invaded my mind, a silent gesture of his that made me doubt my memory, a phrase that echoed like a hidden weapon, I breathed, remembering, it wasn't crazy, it was gaslighting. And that for me was more than a diagnosis. It was liberation. I texted my best friend, I'm alive, but I feel broken. And she replied in the middle of the night, I cried too, but I never doubted you. That's when I understood. Healing is receiving shelter where there was only guilt. Once, revisiting our old photos, I deleted the last one that showed us together. Not out of anger, but out of self-love. Truly loving would not make me stand by those who tried to disappear me. I started to take care of my body with affection. Slow walks, hot baths with foam that hugged, music that nourished me instead of suffocating me. He laughed at silly movies, breathed fresh air. Everything was a poem that we rediscovered after living an emotional thriller. This journey is not fast. It doesn't have an epic soundtrack, but there is my breath, my choice, my rebirth. I know that pain can come back as a memory or as a longing, and that's okay. Longing is not weakness. Longing is a sign that you lived, that you loved, and that above all, you survived. That is why I say with every fiber of my being, the pain I feel now is not failure. It's rebirth. It is part of the reconstruction of a woman who went through gaslighting and won. And for you, who are there lost in this fog, don't expect immediate clarity. Don't expect order in the emotional mess. But please breathe, because the pain you feel, it is the first chapter of his new story. And in this story, you won't just be a survivor. You will be the protagonist of your peace. And for the first time, I don't want him to understand what he did to me anymore. I just want me to never forget what I've done for myself, because understanding what I experienced is no longer his responsibility. It's mine, my process, my cure, my reconstruction. The narcissist doesn't come back with an apology. He comes back with recycled promises, trained looks, rehearsed gestures. He says he misses you, but what he really feels is a lack of the control he lost. And I know because he tried to come back. He sent messages as if he just wants to know if you're okay. He marked me in memes as if we still had intimacy. He asked questions about my family. He said, I feel that you are colder, more distant, as if he hadn't frozen my soul for so long. But I'm not the same anymore. The woman who trembled when she heard his tone of voice, now it trembles with strength. Because getting out of an abusive relationship is not just about getting out of the house, out of socializing, out of photos. It's getting out of the cycle. It is to reprogram yourself. It is to take everything that has been broken and glue it with love, self-esteem. This one that I went to rediscover in parts. On a solitary trip to the coffee shop where he said, it wasn't our style. In a dress that he criticized for showing too much. In a text I wrote crying at 3 a.m. where I said to myself, you're real. Your pain is valid. And no one has the right to diminish that. Today, if someone asks me if it still hurts, I answer truthfully, yes. Sometimes it hurts. But now, the pain doesn't paralyze me. It reminds me of what I overcame, then I never accept again, of how much it cost to leave, and for that very reason, I will never return. And if you're out there now, at that point where doubt screams louder than your inner voice, close your eyes, breathe, and listen to the only thing you need to hear today. You're not crazy. You're waking up, and wake up. It's the first step to freeing yourself. And wake up. It's the first step to freeing yourself. But no one talks about how painful it is to wake up from a relationship with a narcissist. Because you don't wake up with relief. You wake up grieving, mourning the woman you were trying to be for him. I mourn the plans she made alone, thinking they were for two. I grieve a relationship that, deep down, never existed. At least not as you thought. It's hard to admit that it was all a game of control. That the care came with poison. That the compliments were traps. That love was conditional, always conditioned on its emotional submission. But to recognize that, it is the beginning of the truth. And the truth, healing. At first, I felt like I had failed, as if it wasn't enough. But today I see, what failed was the lie. And this is not defeat, it is liberation. Because as much as he tried to erase who I was, he couldn't. My laughter still exists. My voice came back. My look today is mine, without his filter, without the fear of displeasing herself. And now I know, if love makes you walk on eggshells, if it leaves you confused, if it blames you for your own abuses, it is not love. It's emotional prison. And I left. Not perfect, not ready, but live, and mainly, agreed. And once I woke up, I promised myself, I will never sleep on the lap of those who destroyed me again. Today, every gesture of self-care is a political act. Getting out of bed without reviewing 1,000 times what I'm going to say. Look in the mirror and recognize myself. Being able to change your mind without being called unstable. Smile without asking me if he will find it too much. I still hear that voice of his from time to time. The one that said, "You always make drama. You distort everything. You don't remember it right." But now, I answer back. In thought, in strength, in posture. No, I just feel it. And feeling is not distorting. It is to exist. My body, which was once just tension, now breathes again. My skin no longer carries that constant chill of alertness. My mind no longer spins in cycles trying to understand what I did wrong. Because it wasn't about me. It was about control, about diminishing, inverting, confusing. And today I choose clarity. The clarity of a life where no one edits what I see, what I feel, what I remember. Where my emotion is not an argument against me, but a sign that I am alive. Where I no longer need to justify myself for being sensitive, intense, human. The Julia of now is not the same one who entered that relationship. She is stronger, more mature, more attentive. But above all, it is free. And this freedom, I don't trade it for any more. I promise to change. Because now I know, promises do not sustain anyone. What sustains, it's true. And my truth, even if it came with pain, today is my home. It is in it that I rest. It is in it that I rebuild. It is in it that I am reborn. Every day. And in this rebirth, there's no more room for doubt about who I am. For so long, he has been shaping my identity with thrown phrases, small gestures, and heavy silences. Now, I'm the one who chooses each piece of what makes me up. And I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose never to abandon myself again to fit into someone's world. With each new morning, I remember what I survived. Not like an open wound, but like a scar that shines. Because surviving gaslighting is more than getting out of a relationship. It's getting out of a mental prison where you couldn't even trust yourself. And when you leave, everything changes. You start to hear your voice again. He begins to remember what he likes. Begin to make choices without fear. You begin to realize that no matter how hard he tried, he never managed to destroy you completely. Its essence, resisted. Today, I can look back with compassion, not by him, but for me, for Julia, who one day believed that the problem was her, who was silent, who tried, who bent 1,000 times. And even then, it wasn't enough, because it never would be. Because for a narcissist, there is not enough. But for me, now it exists. Exists limit. There is no. There is space. And there is love. Not his. Mine. Because at the end of it all, I found that the love I've been looking for in someone, it was the love I needed to give back to myself. And this return, this reconnection with who I really am, it's the most beautiful ending this story could have. Not because he was happy, but because it was real. And because I finally cored. I woke up, and I never went back to sleep in lies. There are days when I still feel the echo of everything. The echo of manipulative phrases, of the doubts he planted, of the voids he left. But today, when they come, I already know what to do. I breathe, I close my eyes, and I hug myself. Because now I know, I am my safe place. My body, my mind, my history, everything about me is valid. Even when someone has tried to erase it, I exist, and I don't need authorization for that anymore. The greatest pain was not what he did to me. That's what I stopped being because of him. How many times have I kept silent? How many times did I let it go to keep the peace? How many times did I swallow my tears because he said I was exaggerated? But now I cry. When I need to, I cry. And that for me is freedom. Today, when I hear other women telling their stories, I see myself in them. And that's why I speak, so that they also recognize themselves, so that no one thinks they are crazy just because they are confused, so that no one accepts a small life in the name of a love that only grows when it decreases. And if you're listening to it right now, with your chest tightened, with your soul tired, with your mind trying to make sense of it all, I want you to know, you're waking up. That's it. It is an act of courage. Segura firme nessa lucidez. She may seem fragile at first, but it is the seed of all his strength. And one day, you'll also look back and say, I thought I was crazy, but what I was, it was sensitive. He was strong. She was alive. And now, I'm free. Free as every woman deserves to be. Free, and aware that I will never again let my truth be erased. This truth that spent so much time buried under the doubts he planted, who screamed softly inside me while I pretended everything was fine, who cried silently when I smiled on the outside. Today, that truth is my loudest voice, firmer, clearer, and I will never ignore her again. It took me a while to understand that gaslighting is not just manipulation. It is theft, time theft, identity theft, theft of autonomy. But even after everything he took away, what was left in me was enough to rebuild, because the woman he tried to erase, it was precisely the woman who, in the end, turned on her own light. And that light, that light, it may have faltered, trembled, almost faded, but he never died. Because as long as there's a flame inside of us, even if small, even if tired, there is a way, there is a return, there is liberation. Today, when I wake up, I no longer need to analyze anyone's mood before saying good morning. I don't question whether a laugh of mine will turn into a fight later. I don't feel wrong for feeling too much. I just am. And that's all I've ever wanted to be. If I could say something to Julia from the past, trapped in that confusing and cruel cycle, I would say, you are not alone. You're not wrong. You're not crazy. You're being violated from the inside, and no one sees it. But you're going to leave. And when you leave, you'll meet the most amazing woman you've ever met. Yourself. And it is with this woman that I walk now. With this truth that I carry in my chest. With this story that once hurt, but today sets me free. Because every woman who survives gaslighting, it is reborn with a force that frightens those who tried to destroy it. And me? I was reborn. Whole. White. Impossible to erase. Never again. Never again. Because now I don't need anyone to tell me what's real. I know. I know when my heart tightens by intuition. I know when I'm being manipulated, even if subtly. I know when silence is not peace, it is punishment. And I know, above all, that my sensitivity is not a defect. It is my superpower. The narcissist tried to convince me that my greatest gift was a flaw. But today, I embrace every part of me that he rejected. My emotions, my doubts, my intensity. All of this is mine. All of this is sacred, and no one touches it anymore without my consent. Perhaps the greatest victory after emotional abuse is not to forget what happened, but remembering without hurting. To remember and know, I left, I won, I survived, and now I live differently, more calmly, with more listening, with more presence. I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, nor that I'm stable, nor that I'm kind, nor that I'm trustworthy. I just am, and that's enough. Today's Julia still carries the marks, but she carries it with dignity. She is not ashamed of what she has experienced. She no longer shuts up to maintain relations. It no longer shrinks to fit into spaces that were never made for it. And if you're reading or listening to this right now, and recognizing every word as your own, so maybe this is your turning point too. The moment you stop asking yourself, is it me? And he begins to affirm with courage, no, it wasn't me, it was him. And from that point on, everything starts to change. Because when you listen to yourself, no one else can silence you. You are not alone. You're not crazy. You are awake. And an awakened woman, no one else can manipulate. Never again. Never again. Because now I recognize the sound of my own truth, and there is no voice in the world that can drown it out again. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. I still have days when I question myself. I still carry remnants of that insecurity that he planted in me like slow poison. But today, the difference is that I know how to separate. I know what is mine, and what has been projected onto me. I know that I no longer need to carry guilt that was not born in my chest. I know that my peace is not a luxury, it is a right. And I know that the woman who looks in the mirror now, it's the strongest version of me that ever existed. I look back and feel gratitude, not by him, but for me, for having resisted, for not having completely lost myself, for having found, even in the depths of the pain, a spark of lucidity that made me get up. And this is what I want you to take away from this story. It doesn't matter how much he convinced you that you were difficult. It doesn't matter how many times he called you unstable, dramatic, exaggerated. It doesn't matter how many versions of reality it made you doubt. The truth is within you. It can be buried, muffled, erased by layers of manipulation, but it still pulsates. And when you access that truth, even if it's just for a second, you take the first step to get out. And leaving, I promise you, is possible. Afraid, in pain, with doubts, but it is possible. And on this side, life will not go back to the way it was. It gets better, because now you live with consciousness, with eyes open, with a free heart. The Julia who speaks here is proof of that. I not only survived, I came back to myself. And if I succeeded, you can do it too. Because in the end, the biggest answer to gaslighting is this: I'm not crazy, I'm alive, and now I am mine. And to be mine, it's the greatest act of love I've ever done for myself. For a long time, I thought that to love someone was to adapt, to bend myself, to mold myself, to silence me, to erase me a little, just to fit. Today I understand. This was not love. It was submission in disguise. It was fear masquerading as understanding. It was the price he made me pay for simply existing as I am. And I paid dearly. I paid with sleepless nights, with unexplained body aches, with anxiety attacks before dates, with an emotional life on constant alert, as if any move of mine could be used against me. Today I look at all this with compassion. I don't blame myself anymore, because I did what anyone does when they believe they are being loved. I tried, but now I don't try to fit in anymore. I exist. I remain. I support myself. And the woman I am now, it no longer needs to be understood by those who only want to control. It needs to be heard by itself. And I listen. Every day. When I wake up and I no longer feel afraid of my own silence. When I make decisions without having to confirm if everything is fine. When I have opinions, and I hold them. When I say no, and I don't apologize later. That's me now. And it is this woman that I want you to see inside you too. Because it exists. She is there, waiting, resisting, screaming softly in the midst of chaos. And when you listen to it, even if just a little bit, you will understand what I understood. You were never crazy. You were just being suffocated. And now, it's time to breathe again. In its time, at your pace, in its truth. And may no one, ever again, make you doubt that. Because those who survive gaslighting don't come back the same. They come back more attentive, stronger, and above all, more whole. Today, I no longer romanticize excuses. I am not moved by empty, beautiful words. I don't let myself be carried away by sweet looks that hide control. Because now I see it. Now I feel what I previously ignored. The weight of subtleties. The poison that comes hidden in passive-aggressive praise. The control that disguises itself as care. I no longer need external evidence to know that I am right. I feel it. And this feeling, which he tried to destroy, today is my compass. I feel when I'm being manipulated. I feel when it's not my fault, even if they try to throw it at me. I feel when the energy changes. And this time, I don't question myself anymore. I act. I protect myself. I walk away. Because love should never be a psychological battlefield. Real love, it is shelter. And after so much emotional war, I just accept to live in peace. I don't accept walking on eggshells anymore. I no longer accept being analyzed, corrected, redesigned. I accept to be as I am. Full of flaws, yes, but entirely. With light and shadow. With emotion and reason. With truth always. This story I told here is not only mine. It's all of us who at some point wondered if we were going crazy. It belongs to every woman who was silenced, erased, confused, and even so, resisted. And if there's something the narcissist will never be able to take away from us, it's this. This strength that is born at the exact moment when we stop trying to be understood and begins to understand each other. It was there that everything changed for me. It was there that I was reborn. And today, with every word I write, I plant in the ground the truth he tried to bury. I wasn't crazy. I was being manipulated. And now, I'm free. Free, and never again available to anyone who wants to confuse me. Free, and aware that my story does not end with pain. It begins again with lucidity. The freedom I live today is not made up of great external achievements. It's in the little things that before, I didn't even realize I had missed. Speak without fear of being interrupted, giving my opinion without reviewing every word. Sleep peacefully, without fear of tomorrow he will change his mood. Being able to make mistakes, and not be destroyed by it. It's amazing how we learn to survive in chaos, how we adapt, how we can stand it. But there comes a time when the body can't take it anymore. The mind can't stand it anymore. The soul cries out, enough. And it was in this silent scream that my departure began. I didn't need a scandal. I didn't need proof. I didn't need anyone to believe it. I just had to believe in myself. Is that it? And everything began to change. The woman I am today is not a bitter survivor. She is a healed woman, not because everything has passed, but because everything has been seen. Sense, nominee, and when you name the abuse, it loses its power. Today, when someone tries to erase me, I don't shrink anymore. I stay steadfast, present, because I've been diminished enough. I've questioned my sanity for too long. Now I question the intention of those who try to confuse me. And if you're still in that cycle, thinking the problem is you, thinking that you need to try harder, give in more, love more, let me tell you one last thing. You don't have to be less for someone to love you more. You don't need to be silent to have peace. You don't need to explain yourself all the time to deserve affection. What you need, it is to listen to yourself. It is to welcome yourself. It's choosing yourself. And when you do, even if you're afraid, even if you're in doubt, you will feel something that maybe you haven't felt in a long time. Yourself. That's it. That is freedom. This is love. This is a new beginning. And in this new beginning, I no longer take my fault that is not mine. I take lightness. I take the truth. I take myself entirely. Because I understood that I don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love. That I don't need to be understood by someone who has always wanted to confuse me. And that, above all, the love that really transforms is the one that starts from the inside out. The freedom I built has nothing to do with spectacle. It's simple. It is silent. But it is firm. It lives in the way I now trust my emotions. In the way I close the door to those who destabilize me. In the no that I learned to say without guilt. Today, I honor every tear I shed thinking I was weak. Today, I hug the Julia of before, the one who believed too much, who fought alone, who carried the world to keep a love that only existed because she sacrificed herself. I look at her fondly, because without that Julia, this one wouldn't exist. Without the fall, there would be no such strength. Without the deception, there would be no such clarity. And the clarity, it's what guides me now. If I could leave you with one last image, it would be this. You, in front of the mirror, with his eyes still teary, with her heart still broken, but with his head held high. Because even in pieces, you are whole. Whole because she decided to stop doubting herself. Whole because she chose to listen to herself. Whole because she understood that she no longer needs to fight for the minimum, and that he was not born to beg for love. You were born to be, to exist with truth, to take a deep breath and say, I'm not crazy, I'm alive. And now, more than ever, I am mine, and no one will ever take that away from me, and that no one will ever take away from me. Because when a woman comes back to her senses after being erased, it does not come back fragile. She comes back in one piece. She comes back conscious. She comes back dangerous, not to hurt, but to never again accept crumbs disguised as love. Today I know that I don't need to scream to be heard. My presence is enough. My peace speaks loudly. My truth fills the space that was once occupied by confusion. I no longer look for validation in anyone's eyes, because seeing me for real was what saved me. And now that I see myself, there is no turning back. The narcissist was left behind, with his manipulations disguised as affection. with his apologies adorned with empathy, with its makeup protective control. I'm no longer part of that game. I left. And more than that, I found myself again. Today, I walk with marks. Yes, but they are brands that tell a story of rebirth, of courage, of a woman who one day thought she was crazy, but that she was only moving away from those who wanted to control her. And if this story has reached you, it's because maybe you're waking up too. Maybe you're also starting to hear yourself again. And if so, then listen with an open heart. You are not alone. You're not wrong. You are not weak. You only need one thing right now, you. And when that happens, whole, without fear, without doubt, no one will ever be able to erase you again. Never again.